Hey everybody, I'm back. So much for not trying to keep up with the weekly cadence on the videos. However, fun stuff keeps coming up, so I want to try to, rip into that fun stuff when I can. So here we go. We'll try to pump this one out today. Today the main theme is going to be another media correction. So this time it's from a bit of a surprising source, being my highly recommended Escape Collective, which have generally been a bastion of outstanding information in the chain lubrication and maintenance space. It's been really driven extremely well by Dave Rome and also to a large extent James Huang. It's been for a long time excellent information and advice to all their listeners and cyclists out there. James Huang has very sadly to us all moved on, and I don't know if Brad is officially taking that position, but Brad Copeland, who's a top level, really world tour level mountain bike mechanic, has certainly stepped into the Nerd Alert space, and all up, great expertise and information. But it's just really interesting, and I find it endlessly fascinating as to where still mountain bike demographic is with regards to its thoughts on immersive waxing and chain lubrication versus, say, road, which is much more progressive and has progressed in that knowledge over the last, especially 10 years. So I want to run through, that section of the podcast, and from my perspective, which obviously it's all open for debate. My perspective is that it's going to be correcting fairly strongly some points, with facts and information to back that position. And I'd love to know by the end, I guess, if you think I've sort of substantiated my counterpoints well enough, or if Brad is sort of on point with what he's been putting out there. But as always, before we rip into the main topic, let's cover off a little bit of low friction news. Alrighty, first one off the rank will be strip chip update number about 87. So the concerns I ran through last week had been sent off to Josh, and Josh is now he's strip chip testing some chains that he'll be pulling out of a freezer. So when he updates with how all that went, I will update. However, I think about 99.9% I can preempt that things will align with what we've discovered here already. And that is simply, I guess there's a couple little points here. Firstly, yes, even if you've got live temp going, the live temperature is going to lag behind the actual temperature. I guess fairly similar to with some cooking, where really to know what's going on, you need to shove a temperature probe in because that's going to give you the reading inside what you're cooking as opposed to what the oven display is telling you. The wax pot, the temperature sensor is obviously underneath the pot. You don't have a sensor in your wax sending a signal to your pot to say, hey, here's what the temperature actually is in this melted wax right now. So there's always going to be a lag, and that lag, it will vary a little bit, again, based on ambient temperature where your pot is and the fill level of wax in your pot, but about 10 minutes should be fine. So from when your pot says it's 125 degrees Celsius, give it about 10 minutes after that point for the wax to, for real, reach 125 degrees Celsius. Then you melt in your strip chip, and once that's melted, you're adding your chain. From there, there's going to be a temperature drop. So, the chain is going to be comparatively quite cool compared to the wax, and the wax, volume overall is relatively small. So there's going to be a drop here, 10 degrees, 20 degrees. It's going to be something. And it's going to take that little pot a bit of time, again, that's sort of probably 5 to 10 minutes, to bring that wax temperature up to 125 degrees for the strip chip to really be doing its magic that it wants. So when I get a moment, I'll try to get to it early next week. I'll be, officially updating my guide for the Silka strip chip on the chain prep guide to just reflect what I've run through there. And I imagine Silka may look to do a video update of their own, or just a little instruction update of their own from checking chains that are a bit cooler than what they may have done in their strip chip testing initially. So that's, I think, mostly it for strip chip, I think. Now, there was a good valid comment on last week's vid that hey, wow, this strip chip seems like it's more steps in faff than just cleaning it via, solvents or other methods. It's not really coming across as sort of simpler and easier and less faff. And yeah, I think it's for sure come across like that because there's been FAQ vid by Silka themselves to cover off a lot of the questions that they had coming in. And I've done, as we know, a number of updates to clarify certain things, and we're kind of still going. But it's a new product, so it's doing something that and in a manner that hasn't been done before. So some level of clarification and smoothing things out after rollout with regards to exactly what we should do and how. That's not exactly unforeseen. And I think, once we have sorted here's just the simple specific steps to take, and these steps are factoring in probably 99% of any of the questions that somebody has to ensure they're going to do it correctly. I think it's going to come across, sort of really as it is, which is just another great easy option to pre-prep your chain for, getting rid of the factory grease and onto waxing. Right, last bit of low friction news today, just covering off a bit on master links. So Silka have also done a video covering off some information with regards to, waxing and master links. So chain compatibility, reusability, should you wax them or not? And that's fantastic. It's helping to bring a bit of balance to some of the other information that we've seen come out from some media recently, which is it's kind of painted master links as almost these instruments of death. And I did a correction on one, but yeah, there's been a few people in a few places that have. I'm not entirely sure what they're seeing with regards to master link use that I have certainly not seen, and I would say that the zero friction cycling customer base, same as some others like Molten Speed Wax and likely Silka, the ZFC customer base is a base of thousands of customers who predominantly are, waxing, and or if they're not waxing, they are using wax plus a wax strip lube, or having moved to that, but also doing some periodic maintenance, which is recommended to be in general off bike. So there's still master link use there, even if it's not as frequent as waxing. And yeah, we're just not seeing anything remotely like what some places have sort of painted, using something at the end of the day that's a fairly simple and very safe and secure little piece of kit. And just as general information, something I forgot to mention when I did the correction on the Cade media, where they really went pretty hard on master links being almost these little mass murder connectors, that we have had reported by, I forget the exact number off the top of my head now, sorry, but it's around sort of 6 to 8 times the number of chain failures across all brands than we've ever had reported master link failures from people reusing master links. Granted, there is likely a slant where if somebody has their chain fail, they are much more likely to come in contact again with us to say, hey, my chain snapped, what have we got with regards to warranty? And may well not do so if just a master link fails. However, it's not like it's a small gap number. The number of chain fails over the last 8.5 years is just well in excess of reported master link failures, which is extremely low, as in still well under 10 total reported in over 8.5 years of selling a absolute ship ton of packs of master links to immersive waxing customers. We have a customer base of thousands of immersive waxers. So, if I think really anybody is going to be getting a concerning picture with regards to master link failures, especially master link reuse failures, it's likely to be myself and ZFC. And yes, I'll try to remember to put a link to the Silka video on master links in this one, if my seemingly early onset Alzheimer's remembers. And yeah, it's only about 12 minutes long, so worth a listen to. It's a great little cover off with some excellent general information on master links. One of the main points, though, that it's great that there's alignment from Silka on, as well as with sort of ZFC, because I think it's a very common question for them as well, is should I wax the master link or not? The ZFC advice has always been no, and the reason for that is, all right, here is a master link. Let me try to get a pen going. Okay, so we can see we have the pin. we can see we have this wonderful groove in the pin. Now that groove on both sides is going into what we can call here the locking channel. So when you push this pin through your chain, initially that pin is going to sit in this place here. And then when you use your tool to squeeze the link apart, that pin gets snicked into this special locking channel. Now, if you re-wax your master link, you're going to get a whole bunch of wax that builds up at the base of the pin once it's cooled and set. And already there's excess wax on the two ends of the chain that you're trying to join. So you've already got just a little mini challenge to make sure that when you're pushing the pin through the chain, you push it through the chain far enough that this groove is able to get into position here to go into the locking channel. If this pin is not pushed through the link far enough, then basically this part of the pin is going to be sitting just, sort of shy of this locking channel, and it's going to miss going in there. And what can happen is you may only lock in one side of the link and not the other. So you get one end of the pin in a locking channel, but not on the other side. And that's not a secure fit. And that link is going to bend open at some point, usually under high load, and that link will fail. So simply, you've got plenty enough wax on the chain, and by just doing the chain and not the master link, the risks or how difficult it is to get the master link installed, it's pretty easy, especially with really not much practice at all. You know what it feels like when you start to use the tool. You get a bit of movement straight away as the groove of the pin starts to go into the locking channel. Whereas if you start to squeeze the tool and it's just rock solid, then it's most likely that this part of the pin is butting up against that and things aren't going anywhere. And so you give things a bit of a wiggle and a bit more of a squeeze, and then you try again. Yeah, it's moving in. So it's like a lot of things. You kind of, explaining it is one thing, doing it is another. But once you start to do it, it all makes sense pretty quick, and you get the feel of that very quickly. And a simple check as well is that after you have installed it, you just physically check that the pin is locked into the channel on both sides of the link, not just the side that is facing out to you. And so doing that, the risk of failure or the risk of installing it incorrectly is just really, really low. If you wax the master link, you simply increase the difficulty of that by like a lot. And you'll often find that this wax build up at the base of the pin, it's something that you may have to physically then scrape off using the edge of one link to scrape it off the base, and doing that on both sides so that you can then install the link and actually push this pin far enough through for that to happen. So it's just a right pain in the butt. It's increasing the risk of not installing it correctly, especially if you're not in the habit of checking that you have. And it's just not needed because there's way enough wax on the ends of the chain itself that are going to take care of the master link for through to when you need to re-wax again, that you just don't have an issue there. So if you are doing a real ultra distance event and you wanted to just super duper make sure that you were not going to run out of lube on the pin or surfaces of your master link, then you can just pop a drop of wax compatible drip lube on, like UFO drip or SS drip or something like that. But it's like in 99.99% of cases, you are just never ever going to have to worry about do you have enough wax to take care of your master link. And sorry, just one last low friction update. This one's fairly new, and it's really interesting. So I wanted to just quickly pump this in today as well, and then we'll probably have hopefully some further information next week. But just a really, let's just say, very interesting and innovative product launched by an immersive wax company in Belgium called CycloWax, who overall have been doing some really good things in the space. Let's see what they've launched today as part of the Tour de France. Okay, so they are the first to go for immersive waxing with the chain still on the bike. Now, obviously there are questions. I won't spend too much time on them because, we're already at the limit a bit today. But, part of the immersive waxing is you do need to melt the old coating off the chain and put a fresh coating on. So you can't just put hot wax straight onto a cold chain and get a good waxing. So how slowly do you need to pedal to get the chain through this system for that to occur? And if that takes an age and you have to do that manually, will that be less faff than the existing remove chain method? How do you change the wax over from the pot? Is that sort of nice and easy? And obviously cost will be, I think, fairly important as well. I imagine this is going to cost more than most crock pots or slow cookers, even temperature control ones. So as I get more details, I will obviously update here, and I'll hopefully get a unit from Cyclowax to test. That'll be great if we can do that, and obviously, start getting the answers to some really interesting questions. But overall, got to hand it to them. That is quite something to try to step into hot waxing on bike, and it's going to be really interesting to see where this does or doesn't go. Just looking a bit further, there's I guess a non-zero chance that this may actually be driving or turning the back wheel, and that would obviously save you having to manually pedal the chain through the system. So if it would need to pedal the wheel obviously anti-clockwise to turn the drivetrain to get the chain to go through, because if it went clockwise, just the back wheel is going to spin. So that'll be really, really interesting if this is just taking care of all of it by itself and you don't have to do anything apart from, I guess, a little bit of setup to get the bike or back wheel into the unit and have the unit running. So stay tuned. Could be cool. Alrighty, so time to get to the main fun for today. Now, before I start playing, I guess some of the Brad's points and information, and then me countering that with some different information to convince you otherwise. Really, there's I guess a main myth and misconception, especially within the mountain bike demographic, that this really gives me an opportunity to try to correct. Again, I've obviously failed so far in all my previous attempts, and so these media corrections, they're just they're more practice for me to see if I can present information in a way that finally gets at least some of the mountain bike demographic, especially at the the level of Brad, shifting from one position to hopefully a better position on this front. And at the end of the day, I want as many media places giving their audience and the cycling community the best possible information on this front, because I don't really know of another area in cycling that can just easily save you so much money in running costs and maintenance time and general cleanliness and all that wonderful stuff. Obviously, efficiency for races, than just simply being on a top lubricant choice. And immersive waxing is simply one of those top lubricant choices, which is often portrayed incorrectly. Alrighty, just so you're not stuck looking at my silly face for too long, here's a mock-up of, I guess, from what I've gathered over time, here's a representation of what I think the average mountain bike mechanic or cyclist sort of believes or perceives with regards to immersive waxing, in that they believe that it is a huge amount of time and faff for really not that much benefit overall, versus just slapping on whatever drip lube choice they've randomly come across. The reality that I'll be trying to conclusively prove to you today is that it is actually very, very little amount of time and faff for a huge amount of benefits. Okay, so I want to try to establish first a couple of really foundational points. Number one, and I guess I want to establish these as pretty well undisputed facts. So part one, your chain and its lubricant is operating completely exposed to the environment. There really aren't a lot of parts that are working like a bat out of hell like your chain, where the lubricant is just completely exposed to all contamination, and off-road that is a lot. So over time, contamination, abrasive contamination, will become part of the lubricant. And obviously that's especially so, and much more rapidly so, when you're riding off-road. Mechanically, the chain is working extremely hard. I mean, it's just orders of magnitude harder than your bearings, which are spinning lazily in a nice sealed environment. The chain is going like an absolute bat out of hell. It has got tens to hundreds of thousands of sliding surface friction movements a minute, a lot of those under very high pressure load. And so if you have had your lubricant become even mildly abrasive, that has a really huge impact on the level of frictional wear going on in your chain. So all of part one, I can't see how any of that can be disputed, especially in the mountain bike and gravel world. So based on that, periodic maintenance to reset the abrasive contamination level in the lubricant is obviously more beneficial than not doing so. And so really we want to have a look at, comparatively, is periodic solvent flush cleaning of your chain to reset that contamination, is that less time, less faff and costs and all that, versus simply doing a re-wax? So there might be obviously if you're immersive waxing all the time, there's going to be a frequency difference because you're sort of re-waxing each re-lube, whereas you might be solvent flush cleaning your chain only periodically if you're not waxing. But there's quite obviously going to be a wear rate difference in that as well. And what we really want to be doing is weighing up those two paths. So off-road cycling typically requires very frequent resets of the chain to get that lubricant back to being not containing abrasive contamination causing friction and wear. The top wax strip lubricants are actually fairly impressive. You can go for a pretty good stint without needing to do a reset. But a lot of the wet lubricants that are still very common in the off-road world, much to my eternal surprise, some of those, unless you're doing that after like every ride, you have a friction and wear nightmare going on, masquerading as the chain lubricant. At the end of the day, if you are not performing some level of periodic maintenance with a drip lubricant, then you will pay for that in faster component wear. And these days that can very easily be very expensive. It can also be that sometimes I think pro mechanics don't understand this point as well as those of us who have to actually buy our parts, especially if you're buying those parts at retail. It is sometimes a different kind of mindset or way of operating when you are mechanicking for world tour cyclists, where you can just grab new parts essentially, and it's not maybe costing you anything. And from a bike store mechanic and retail side, it's usually just a path of least resistance. So a lot of them, especially stereotypically in the mountain bike world, will have a mindset of here they're not maliciously trying to dudge you out of excellent drivetrain running and good lifespan of your components. They just genuinely will have this perception that it's immersive waxing is a whole bunch of faff and time for not that much benefit, as opposed to what I'll be trying to prove to you shortly here. And so in their minds, it's just like, why would I risk being stuck in a 30-minute conversation on a path that I really don't get myself, as opposed to, hey, just grab this bottle of Mark-Off or Finish Line or whatever else that just sells itself due to the legacy marketing power of that brand, and away we go. They'll, in a lot of cases, just genuinely think they are a good product as per the marketing from that brand. All right, let's rip into playing some of the parts from the podcast. And let's see if by the end of that and my counterpoints, if I'm able to, walk the talk, talk the walk, one of those on the little pie charts that I whipped up there. This segment is actually a good point to cover that Dave Rome's making.
So the Master Links was a big one, but it's also just the improvement and the growth of really good drip-on wax loops. So what I tend to do now is when I install the chain, I will hot melt wax it to begin with, and then I'll basically just use a top-up lube over the top of that. And a lot of that is just mechanics tend to be a little bit lazy with their own bikes. They tend to perhaps cut corners when it comes to their own bikes because they're spending their days working on other people's bikes. So for me, just putting on a drip wax lube is easier than taking it off and going through the wax process. And yeah, it just simply comes back to the fact that some of these drip lubes, like Ceramic Speed UFO drip, for example, or Dilka Super Secret, or even just like a chain lube called Smooth, are all really, really good these days and get you most of the way to the benefits of a hot melt wax.
Okay, so a really good discussion point there by Dave. So yes, I mean, some of the top wax strip lubricants out there today are outstanding. However, now I've used a more extreme pick here just to sort of, I guess, demonstrate things. This is from a more harsh conditions ride. However, off-road, these for sure do come up. But even if it's not as bad as this, so let's say that your off-road riding dust was, generally a lot better than this, and you don't have a chain that looks like this at all after your ride, that's great. But after 500 kilometers of off-road riding, 800, 1,000 kilometers of off-road riding, for sure there is dust getting into your chain. Now your chain it has some gaps in it. It has these gaps because it needs to be able to flex laterally for you to be able to run chain line angles on your cassette. Now, dust getting in here, which it will, whether it's a solid wax chain or any other wax lubricant or wet lubricant, dust is going to get in between your inner and outer plate link. But more crucially and more damaging is dust is going to get in past the side of the roller and your inner plate link. From there it has access to try to get down into the main load surfaces, so the roller bore on the inner plate link shoulders and the inner plate link shoulders here on the pin. And these are your main main wear surfaces that once they start to wear too much will have elongation wear of your chain past the recommended replacement mark and do a whole bunch of fun damage to your expensive cassette and chain rings. So simply though, you cannot avoid, especially off-road, dust getting past this part here. So if I go back to my more extreme example, whilst out in the world of dirt and dust, you can do some good hints and tips and tricks to try to remove the surface dust off your chain, like spray some alcohol onto a microfiber cloth, wipe your chain to lift some of that surface dust off to try to minimize how much of that you are dragging into your chain on relube. You cannot lift off the dust that has penetrated down past the side of the roller and the inner link plate inner link plate. So when you relube, that dust is going to be dragged deeper into the chain by the lubricant. It's going to drag it down into the main load surfaces where we really don't want abrasive contamination. So at some point, and again, depending on how bad your, how dusty is your riding, how fine, how abrasive, all that stuff is really going to determine how often do you want to reset the lubricant in your chain from, becoming more and more abrasive to now being just beautiful, clean, not abrasive lubricant. Going back to one of the original points where it is a fact that some level of chain maintenance is going to be beneficial for the friction and wear in your chain than not doing any chain maintenance. And so then it becomes looping back to the point of what is the easier chain maintenance path: solvent flush cleans or popping the chain off into a pot of wax and swishing it around. Now with a number of lubricants these days, they are what's called immersive wax compatible, so a top choice that we have recommended for a long time. So if immersive waxing all the time is not for you, then for sure the next best path is just to use a wax compatible lubricant. And so you relube the next, say, 3 to 5 times with UFO drip or SS drip or true tension tungsten or weather. And then instead of doing a solvent flush clean, you can just do an immersive wax to reset the contamination in your chain. And that is just a whole bunch easier and more fun than a solvent flush clean. If you are on any of the top wax strips and not immersive waxing, obviously sooner or later you are really going to want to do a maintenance reset. And again, off-road, that's something that is going to need to be done relatively frequently if you want your beautiful lubricant to actually still be beautiful lubricant in your chain and not something that is continually becoming more and more abrasive. There's just no getting around it. And hopefully that picture becomes fairly clear. Okay, so like I've said on some vids in the past, like, you are going to pay the piper one of two ways. You're going to pay the piper in higher friction and wear, and how much that costs you is going to depend a lot on, obviously, lubricant choice, conditions you're riding in, how expensive your components. Or you can pay the piper with a little bit of time and maintenance. How much time and maintenance that is going to depend on your lubricant choice and maintenance choice. So I think for some like Dave, Dave, I imagine has multiple bikes of his own, and he's also doing a lot of test riding of test bikes. It's quite possible that Dave is not, I guess, going to notice an increased wear rate of one path versus another, like a lot of cyclists would. I think it's highly probable that Dave may not even keep a bike long enough to really worry about drivetrain wear before it's been 10 years. It's clocked up 3,000 kilometers on that bike, and now it's moved on to something new, and it all starts again. And so whether he was on UFO drip the entire time, or doing immersive waxing and UFO drip, or immersive waxing, I don't know if he would notice that, because his kilometers are spread across so many different bikes. And if that's you, if you're going to only wear through a drivetrain every, who cares if it's every 10 years versus every 15 years? May not matter, but that's not, I don't think, representative of most cyclists that are spending a fair bit of time on one drivetrain or one or two drivetrains. And they really will notice the difference between a better lubrication and maintenance path versus a not as good one, and that cost can really make a big difference if it's on the wrong path or just not as good a path. All right, this next bit I think leads nicely into my first little pie chart that I put up.
Yeah, I never really got on the wax game myself. I see it with both positives and negatives, and they kind of neutralize, and then it's a time-consuming activity that I feel like isn't worth the time for what you can achieve another way. So what I like to do, Dave, is totally strip my new chain of all factory grease and start with ceramics UFO trip lube and just keep going through that, because the problem I have with wax, among other things, is that it kind of builds up all over the drivetrain, which again, on my own bike, and I'm sort of conscious and meticulous about that, it's no big deal. But when I see people bring in bikes they've waxed the chain on and never really stop to look at anything, first of all,
I think the first part that you're talking about there really, it's what sits behind my little first pie chart on the time and faff versus benefits perception. Just with regards to build up, that one is really odd, because one of the key benefits for immersive waxing is its cleanliness. This is my personal sort of workhorse training mountain bike cassette after 7,000 kilometers. That's how it looked at that point. This has no, I guess, specific cleaning to try to say keep it looking clean. This cassette would be jet washed post wet muddy rides, just to wash the mud off, which I can do with just cold water, because the mud's not mixed in with a whole bunch of oil or wet lube, in which case you need to clean your cassette with some solvent and cloths and brushes, which is a whole bunch of faff. When you can just wash it off with some water and have your cassette looking almost brand new again, that's a great benefit of the top commercial immersive waxes. We've discussed in the past that, some of I think the perception or the issues that bike stores see with regards to gunked up wax chains comes from some of the not so good DIY waxing. And there is such a wide spectrum with regards to how good DIY waxing can be, from people using a pretty good wax base that's going to stay really clean like this, to people using really, oily, cheap wax bases that really do gunk up. And sometimes people are adding all sorts of stuff to their wax base, from lanolin to beeswax to you name it, and getting all sorts of differing results with regards to how much and how quickly it can gunk up. And bike mechanics do see some horror stories sometimes where there's so much wax build up, especially around this area here where it won't even shift in or stay in the smallest cog. Pulleys that are all gummed up and that sort of stuff. But I don't think they're asking the question, what wax are you using to get your drivetrain looking like that? And that would be really handy. It's thankfully dying off a fair bit over the last years. But, when wax were the gunk up champions of the world, I mean, nothing gunked up a drivetrain like that stuff. Partly because the way that you apply it was, most of it you're applying to the bloody side of plates of the chain as opposed to it being deep in the chain where you need it. And the stuff set like concrete, so absolute nightmare, and often conflated with waxing because it was a rub-on wax. So yeah, I think there are already comments on the podcast, people using Silka Hot Melt or M-Speed wax saying, what's he sort of on about with regards to build-up, because I sure as heck don't see that with my Hot Melt and so on, and quite frankly, you do not. There can be some small build-up over time with the top commercial waxes, but it's generally pretty small and very self-limiting, and if you do want to keep your cassette in showroom condition, it's a really, really easy clean with just a stiff brush and or some hot water. Again, no solvents spray and spray vapors to breathe in. So yeah, generally one of the key draw cards of immersive waxing for people is the cleanliness, even more so than the friction and wear benefits. So something's odd there, and I think it would be great to start asking the question when I see a gunked up wax drivetrain, what is this wax? What is this lube? All right, so now's about as good a time as any for me to start disproving that pie graph of the time and faff versus benefits. So let's have a look at, some data consolidation from our league table at the moment. All right, so I'm going to cover benefits first, and then we will have a look at the time component. This wonderful little graph here, so lower is better. So now testing, looking at the data of the zero friction cycling main test by the end of block 5, which is 5,000 kilometers of testing. It has a dry contamination block for 1,000 kilometers in block 2 and a wet contamination block for 1,000 kilometers in block 4. Chains are relubed as per manufacturer instructions at set point throughout the test. And the full test, if they make it, actually goes through to the end of block 6, which is an extreme contamination block, but only basically 2 lubricants or drip lubricants have ever made it to the end of block 6, so there's just not enough data there without things being all extrapolated. So through to the end of block 5 we have it. Alrighty, so the average wear rate of the top 5 wet lubricants tested to date through to the end of block 5 is 123.7%. Now 100%, as per last week's sort of how to understand our data, 100% means that the chain is worn to the recommended replacement mark of 0.5% wear. So that means at 123.7% the chain is worn 23.7% past that, so the chains are past their recommended replacement mark. That's the average finish result across the top 5 wet lubricants ever tested to date by the end of block 5. The average of the top 5 wax drip lubricants. Sorry, I don't know why that is showing that as orange. That should show that as green in this little legend here, so apologies for my graph being weird. The average for the top 5 wax drip lubricants is 67.9%. So, not quite, less than half, but around about half. So that's a pretty strong case for wax drips versus wet. The average for the top 5 immersive waxes is 18.2%. So we are talking basically 1/6 the wear versus the top 5 wet lubricants ever tested, and less than 1/3 the wear versus the top 5 wax drip lubricants ever tested. So now I don't know about you, but what is half the wear rate or 1/3 the wear rate to your $300 cassette and $400 chain rings mean? What does it mean if your cassette's $700 and your chain rings are, $500? What does it mean if your T-Type XXSL cassette is $1,100 and your chain is $250? What is 1/3 or 1/6 the wear of those components mean for you. You know, this is hopefully starting to paint the picture that the benefits for immersive waxing are not some minor little thing where you get a little bit longer wear life, and you know it's a bit better. The benefits for immersive waxing, and again especially in the world of off-road, if I was to do this data just off block 2, which is the dry contamination block, these results would be massively more skewed again towards immersive waxing, as opposed to a test which is covering in dry road conditions as well. Now, if you didn't happen to be on one of the top 5 wet lubricants ever tested, or one of the top wax strip lubricants tested, the average of all wet lubricants tested to date through to the end of block 5 is 239.5% wear. So basically, if we were replacing the chains at the recommended replacement mark, we would basically have used up 2.5 chains to get to the end of the main test on the average of the wet lubricants. And let me tell you, the worst tested wet lubricants are just so phenomenally bad that sadly, when people end up on one of those, it is really big ouch time. The average for all wax drip lubricants tested is 92.1%, and the average of all immersive waxes tested is 43.5%. Overall, there's been a lot less immersive waxes tested, so this result is heavily impacted by, one by the candle wax result, which actually wasn't too bad, but the absolute black graphene wax really did a number on the averages. It sort of blew these out of the water a bit, but even with that, we are still looking at half the wear rate, basically versus versus all wax strip lubricants, and what are we, 1/6 again the wear rate versus all wet lubricants tested. And that is significant, again, especially considering how many mountain bikers are still throwing on wet lubricants, and what do they think wet lubricants become in the world of dirt and dust. Now we have just an estimation of if one was to do, say, the combo approach of immersive wax and then use a wax compatible drip lubricant for say 3 to 5 relubes, and then do an immersive wax to reset the contamination. It'll be another test I'll need to try to add to my to-do list, but it's going to be, say, around about 60%, or perhaps around, say, a quarter of what the wear rate is versus all wet lubricants tested, and 2/3 versus the average of the wax strip lubricants. So still a great path. And again, even if you cut your wear rate by half or 50% and your components cost hundreds, it's really meaningful. And it's we have to get to the time part next, but it's really simple to do. Right, so yeah, that's what we have from a control test perspective, which is really going for that sort of apples to apples comparison, because all of the products are being put through exactly the same amount of runtime, load, contamination, exposure of the same type and same point during the testing, and it's up to the lubricant to protect the chain from wear. On top of that, though, obviously there is a huge amount now of real-world data, not only from myself. So I used to be on a wet lube, and I switched to waxing when I sort of found out about waxing, and to me it was fairly captain obvious as to why that was just flat out going to be better. So I've been immersive waxing now across road, time trial, cyclocross, gravel, mountain bike for coming up on 125,000 kilometers. So it's a fair bit of personal experience, and also being in zero friction cycling and selling a lot of wax to a lot of customers, many of whom are obviously local, both avid racers that I'm seeing at local races, to professionals, to just the whole massive thousands of waxing customers that we've built up over the years. We get a lot of real world feedback. So we've got a huge amount that backs very much the controlled testing side of the data. So I guess really on that, I'd love to know, for people, say like Brad, that have the mindset or the impression or the take that immersive waxing gives you a bit of benefit, but it's not that much and not really worth the time and faff. What's sitting behind that? What is he seeing that I'm not seeing that is showing immersive waxing to not give you that much benefit? Has he been asking the customers through the workshop, how many kilometers has your chain done? What wear rate is it at? What are you using? What conditions are you riding in? and building up that knowledge base and getting a comparison of where the immersive waxing customers are. And really we want to focus on those that are using a proven top commercial wax, not some gunky DIY thing with beeswax and lanolin and goodness knows what else. You know, what has he got that's sitting behind his take at the end of the day? That is what I'd really love to know, because I guess I've got sort of all of mine on one side, all the pictures and all the ducks in a row telling us one thing. Yet we've got a very, accomplished, intelligent, experienced mountain bike, world tour level mechanic putting out a take that's sort of, at the end of the day, fairly at odds with all of what I've just presented there. And I'd really like to know what's sitting behind that. So Brad, please send me that if you've got it, or if you just want to have a chat. Would love to know more, because it's if I have some learnings to do in the space from real world professional mountain bike mechanics like yourself, I'd love to get those learnings. Alrighty, time to rip into the time component, because that's the other in my very confident view, huge misconception that's still often pumped out with regards to immersive waxing, in that it's some massive time and faff, when in reality it really is not. And it is, again, compared to doing other forms of flush clean chain maintenance, I cannot see how any of those stack up as being less faff and faster than simply doing an immersive wax. So I'm going to, refer back to a video that I've already made, which is the waxing the concise version, where I sort of demonstrate that. So I'll pop some of that vid up as I talk through. But I want to know that Brad is someone who preps chains for world tour, races. He is well versed in degreasing a chain. Degreasing the chain is always the most faffy part. Once that's done, whether you're running a top wet lubricant, wax strip, or immersive waxing, at the end of the day, if he's versed with immersive waxing, once you've done this a couple of times, I don't know how you arrive at a place where immersive waxing is this massive time faff, because it's just really easy and simple. So let's explore this. All right, so I'm just going to play some bits from the video I've done before, which is the waxing the concise version. My attempt to be concise, always fun. And I'll try, if I can, to get a little timer on screen. And let's see, even with me explaining stuff as I go, how long does it physically take to do a re-wax? Now, obviously, in normal re-waxing, where you pop the chain off, put it on the wax pot, turn your pot on, that's the textbook way to do a re-wax, because as the wax heats up, your chain heats up, the old coating of wax melts off. And then whenever you come back to the pot, you just swish it around and then hang it to set. So we do not count the time that it takes for the wax to melt. Same as you don't stand in front of your washing machine or dryer when you are washing or drying your clothes. You go and do other stuff. And then you come back when it's done. So it's the same with that. You don't stand at the pot waiting for the pot to melt. You just simply put the chain on top of the wax, turn the pot on, go do fun stuff, come back whenever later, it will be melted, and you swish it and then you hang it to set. So the actual physical labor time for most is going to be somewhere around about 3 minutes to pop the chain off, put it on a swisher, pop it on the wax, turn a pot on, come back whenever later, swish it around, hang it to set. And then just before your next ride, you just need the time to break the wax bond on the link so that you can reinstall the chain and reinstall the chain. That's it. So let's have a look at that, and then let's see if, we think it's a massive time faff, especially compared to other options that will flush clean your chain. Or is it actually perhaps really quick and simple? Of the drivetrain, master link tool, I pop that in there, I squeeze, that pops the master link open. I can now remove my chain. I just pull it from the top there, and I just pull that out from the derailleur there. Keep your master link. I do not wax the master link, and I explain in the other video why. So now I've got my chain off the bike. That's pretty easy. Now I'm going to demonstrate putting it onto the swisher tool and into the wax pot. So we'll move over to the wax pot. Okay, I have, I think 7 steps later, arrived at my wax pot. I'm getting my swisher tool. and I am threading it, just looping basically some spans of chain onto the swisher tool into the wax pot. Now, normally I would put it onto the wax that is not melted, turn the pot on, go away, do fun stuff, come back whenever later when it's melted. That way the chain will have heated up to the same temperature as the wax, the old coating melted off, and now I can just swish it and get a fresh coating in and hang it to set. Since I basically have sort of preset this up for the video, the wax is already melted, so you can sort of see it in there. We're going to pretend that it has been in there for 10 minutes, and I am going to swish it and hang it to set. So if you do put it into pre-melted wax, give it 10 minutes so the old coating can melt off and you can swish a fresh coating through. So I take it out of the wax pot. You note I'm wearing gloves because the wax and the chain will be hot, and I hang it to set. I've got a good setup to hang it to set where the wax drips off back into the pot. Don't stress if that's hard for you to do. Just have it drip into like an aluminium barbecue tray, something like that, easy as. All right, here's one I've done earlier for demonstration purposes. So a freshly waxed chain is stiff. You do need to break the wax link bond before you can reinstall it onto your drivetrain. So you can do it link by link with your thumb. That gets not as much fun as if you can set up something where you can just rip it through. So you can use, like some people use just a piece of dowel and something, a wheelie bin handle around their tool stand. There's a whole bunch of solutions to more quickly and easily do it, or just do it link by link with your thumb. And that's that. Now I'm ready to go back and install it onto my bike. Alrighty, so back at my bike, I just need to thread the chain back through the same way basically as it came out. So I'm going to do that through the top span. And so I just thread that through. I want to have a little bit of chain hanging over the other side there. It's just rewinding over the derailleur, over the cassette, and you're just threading it back through the derailleur exactly the same way as it is going to run, obviously, when you're pedaling. So thread that back through around the top cog, around the bottom cog, pull that through, grab my master link and master link pliers, put that in one side, put that in the other side, get the pins into the fat part of the, or the open part of the link. And again, if you want detail on how to do that, it's on the other videos. Get my link tool in. Oops. So I've got the link tool in the wrong spot there for the camera, but that's all right. I just basically put this in one side, and squeeze that open. Snicks the link tool into place. And my chain is back on. Give that a bit of a pedal. You get a bit of excess wax to start with. And then after a few minutes of pedaling, that will be all smooth, and you'll get, now you're up for a good few hundred Ks of ultra low friction, silky smooth riding.
Yeah, so it's pretty much on 4 minutes actual labour time to do a rewax, with at least a half a minute of explanation in there as well. And normally if I'm just sort of doing it by myself, just moving one step to the next without rambling on, yeah, I am easily at, I guess, an average of say 3 minutes actual labour time to do a rewax. I am at longer than that to do any type of solvent flush, clean and dry the chain and then re-lubricate it. So I'm really interested into where, people who I guess are pretty well versed with working with bikes and chains and lubrication and doing some immersive waxing, where do we get hung up on that it is a big time and faff to do what I just demonstrated there, which was really quick and easy?
Yeah, I never really got on the wax game myself. I see it with both positives and negatives, and they kind of neutralize, and then it's a time-consuming activity that I feel like isn't worth the time for what you can achieve another way.
All right, so I just wanted to replay that bit first for the next bits, because that's what sort of sits behind those little charts there, and I would like to know what is it that he's doing in this other way that is achieving the same thing, because for
any type of drip lubricant path to achieve the same chain wear longevity and day in, day out low friction and cleanliness, you need to reset that chain lubricant via other methods very frequently. And those other methods, so solvent flush cleaning, that is not faster, easier, or cheaper than what I just demonstrated there with doing an immersive wax. So I'd love to know more detail on that. How is he achieving it in another way, in terms of a like-on-like comparison with the benefits of waxing? And what, I guess, again, what chain wear and tracking data has he got that substantiates that is I guess, achieving the same outcome?
Well, I swear it's over 50% coming in with the chains on backwards, which we talked about last week in directional chains, not necessarily upside down with the flat top chain. That's a unique experience, but backwards Shimano chains and backwards quick links, whether
Look, honestly, I don't actually know how big an issue that may be. Haven't run the workshop side of things for a long time now because I've been too busy on the core stuff, so I don't see as many customer bikes through with waxes in their chains. So yeah, I really don't know how often people might be installing directional chains around the incorrect way. Obviously, I'd like to hope that it is infrequent. Not that many chains are actually directional. We basically have Shimano, and that's just, you need to have the writing that's stamped on the plates facing out towards you, which the instructions for that are with every Shimano chain. YBN chains are not directional, apart from the, again, new flat top chain that's out very shortly. Whipperman Connects chains are not directional. KMC chains, I don't believe any of those are directional. Campagnolo chains are not directional. So there's really just Shimano and SRAM flat top. So all the SRAM non-flat top chains, so normal Eagle and all the 11-speed chains, also not directional. So there's not too many flat tops. It is almost impossible. That's the first case I've ever seen or heard of a flat top chain being installed basically upside down. So you've got the flat part trying to bend around your chain rings and cassette as opposed to the curve part. I'm sure there's more than the one case. There can be, obviously everybody can make a sleepy mistake or have a strange moment. But I'd like to think that due to the fact that it's a pretty big giveaway that that's not how it should be, that installing a flat top chain upside down would be really, really rare. And it's one of these things that's, it's a bit of a self-correcting exercise. If you install a directional chain the incorrect way and then you have some issues, you get to the bottom of that pretty quickly and then you don't do that again. So yeah, it's a self-correcting exercise. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's not like the first time somebody who is now on an electric drivetrain forgets to charge their battery and go, well, that's it. I am mechanical shifting for life because having to charge a battery, I can't do that shit. That's that's just a bit beyond my capabilities. The first time you have a flat battery and get caught out on that on a ride, you kind of go, you know what, I'm going to be a little bit more focused on that. And for most, it's extremely rare to get caught out without occurring again. So I'm not really sure if it's a big issue out there or not. I haven't seen or heard. So, I mean, we do get obviously people who write in if they're waxing and they're having a strange issue since they've started waxing. There are the odd occasion where we've fairly quickly diagnosed that the issue is the chain is on the incorrect way and it's a directional chain. But it's been really, really rare, like maybe 1 to 2 of those a year. So if Brad's seeing a whole bunch more of that, like, half of them coming in with it on backwards, maybe that's the case, but it's something that I'd like to think that, people can get on top of fairly quickly and easily. Master links installed backwards. I think, people probably do need to pay a bit more attention to the arrow and the direction on the master link just to ensure. Not entirely sure, apart from some master links that really won't run over, again, the cassette well if they're installed the wrong way around, like the Whipperman Connects. They will jump each time they try to curve around a smaller cog. So again, that's a pretty dead giveaway. Same with the SRAM Eagle links and SRAM flat top links. If you put them on, again, upside down or backwards, you'll get that. It's like, whoa, what's going on? Every time it goes around there, it's the chain's jumping.
For some of the others that are directional, like the Shimano's, I'm not sure how much of I guess if people do notice a difference if they put them on backwards. But obviously, it's just one of those things that if you're going to be removing your chain, be it for maintenance or waxing, it's just simply upon you to reinstall stuff correctly. You need to thread the chain through the rear mech such that the chain's not running over the guide tabs, for instance. Just little easy stuff like that. Yes, you can make a mistake, but it's not something that's difficult to get on top of. So yeah, non-zero risks on some things, but it's really just up to the end user, be it whichever path that they're taking, to do things correctly.
And then just tons of waxy buildup throughout the cassette and on the derailleur pulleys. And I feel like the very nature of applying a drip type lube, kind of you use a hopefully rag to wipe things off at the end, might automatically prohibit or eliminate the likelihood of that buildup occurring. But
let's have a look at some examples. Silka SS Drip is does remain very clean for quite a long time. So this is SS Drip at end of test. I have to remember now. I believe SS Drip reached the end of test after 4,000 kilometers, so block 4. Cassette end of test for SS Drip. And let's have a look at UFO Drip, the new version. So it stayed pretty clean, like not too much build up there. So I mean, these are your best of the best really in terms of wax drip lubricants with regards to cleanliness. Smooth does build up more. So Smooth, you have to be much more careful not to over apply. All right, let's have a look at Silka Hot Melt, the chain at the end of 6,000 kilometers. UFO Drip V2 there, that was also at the end of 6,000 kilometers. That was the first drip lubricant to make it all the way to the end of the main test. Hot Melt cassette. So there is a bit more build up there, but again, this is after 6,000 kilometers of testing, and I forget the total number of rewaxes in that time, but it's a lot, because there's more rewaxing going on during the contamination blocks, and there's more relubing for drip lubricants going on during the contamination blocks. It's I guess from memory it's about 30 rewaxes within the main test. I should refamiliarize myself, but just off the cuff today. All right, molten speed wax, end of main test, the chain ring. Did I have the molten speed wax cassette pick here? Maybe not. Let's have a look at how things go with some of that. This is the top of the line muck-off lubricant, the Nano. Not looking, and that's after 2,000 kilometers for Nano. That was as far into the test as it made it. And so yeah, Nano. So some of the more dirty wet lubes, certainly not the path that you want to go. Sorry, let's go for Smooth. Right, Smooth cassette. So we can see there's a fair bit more build up for Smooth. Smooth is also a renowned tough clean. It's a pretty hard product to clean off, which is why Smooth came out with Smooth Prep to assist with that, which is done near molecular acid. I think it's the strongest chain cleaning solvent I've ever come across by far. And yeah, it's great, but it's just very expensive. It's about, I think, $25 for 250 mil. So it's a little sting in the tail for chain maintenance with Smooth. Most Smooth users won't end up with a chain like this. Smooth's pretty long lasting, so over the time of the test, there was, I guess, more application of Smooth than was needed. So in the main test, things are being re-lubricated and re-waxed at the same kilometer points in each test. And the Smooth treatments could have been pushed a bit longer and not needing so much, I guess, frequency applied. I am absolutely, for all drip lubricants applied, I am wiping the excess off as best as I can after applying and working in as per the manufacturer instructions. But yeah, there comes a point where build-up is inevitable for a lot of wax strips. So yeah, so I mean, comparing to a couple of the absolute best and cleanest wax strips on the market, I think it was, they made a pretty good case that they might sometimes, be really matching the immersive waxing, or in those pics they looked a little bit ahead in some. But it was still overall pretty close. The wax chain certainly looks still brand new. A little bit of wax built up on the cassette, but again, that's after 6,000 kilometers of testing and a lot of rewaxes. It's certainly not anything mega, and it's certainly very easily brushed off. So I'm wondering if what he's seeing is something vastly different to that. My personal bikes actually stay a lot cleaner than on the test, because I think in real life I'm able to re-wax at more sane intervals, or I guess needed intervals, as opposed to just a set point throughout the test where when it's being re-waxed more than necessary, you're going to get a little bit more build-up. But yeah, overall, if Brad's seeing wax or immersive wax drivetrains all gunked up, something I think is going on with regards to what wax that person is using, and that it is not a top commercial wax like your M Speed Wax or Hot Melt or Rex Black Diamond. I'd love to see pics of wax drivetrains using those products that are all gunked up, if you can ever get some of those.
It's a good idea, but I just don't really feel like it's worth the practice, and a lot of people are doing it not 100% correctly, and that gives me even further reason to question it for everybody as like a commonly done thing. I mean, there's definitely a place for it for certain people, but I think some people kind of heard about it, thought it was a cool thing to do. It seemed like you were really doing a lot, but you might be doing too much.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think there's still genuine benefit to it. Like, durability is unquestionably better if you stay on top of it. If you wait until your chain's squeaking, then you probably are doing quite a bit of damage to your drivetrain, and you're better off just using a really good drip lube. But if
Right, so again, I'm not saying that he's incorrect. I'd just really like to know, where for Brad that it's falling over. Where is he, I guess, getting that impression that it's not giving the benefits that are claimed? And, I guess, where is the huge sort of time faff component coming in? So somewhere, obviously, in, Brad's perception and Brad's belief, there's that disconnect between the amount of time and effort and the amount of benefit that you get, which is very different to what I've, I guess, presented today. And I'd like to know what sits behind Brad's. Dave is exactly on point there. There is no point going to immersive waxing if you are not going to stay on top of re-waxing when you should. And this is something that does come up, and it's probably the most frequent issue with, from what I've seen with people who do go the immersive waxing path. And people that, I have multiple times in my just local riding, I've got sort of friends on immersive waxing, and I can be 10 riders back in the group and hear one of my friends' chains just making a horrendous noise, and I'll ride up and it's like, when did you last re-wax the chain? It's like, oh, I don't know. Do you think it needs doing? And it's like, how do they not hear that? So it was probably overdue about 2,000 kilometers ago. So it's one of these things where, depending on your, again, riding conditions and mileage and all those, own personal time, if you're having difficulty staying on top of immersive waxing, then outright immersive waxing as your just your only lubrication path is not the right choice for you. And there are certainly friends that I have who I steer away from going to immersive waxing because I know it is not right for them. They will not stay on top of it. And that will be worse than if they just went to a good drip lubricant option. However, in this lovely day and age where we have great wax, immersive wax compatible drip lubricants like Silka SS Drip, like UFO Drip, and like True Tension Tungsten All Weather, again, you just can start waxed and then just move to relubing with those wax drip lubricants, and then just do a re-wax periodically to reset the contamination that will have started to build up in the chain. And again, doing a re-wax, it's more fun indeed, and easier than doing any other type of flush clean to reset your chain. So it's one of those things where immersive waxing is absolutely not the right path for everybody. Maybe not even a majority, but it is a great path for many cyclists that get a huge benefit with regards to their component lifespans, daily cleanliness, and day in, day out low friction. The combo path is really helping bridge the gap between
I guess, column A and column C, where like, yes, it's a great path for you, and no, it's not, because it just makes things so much easier. It takes the pressure off doing that immersive re-wax when you can just top up like you would if you were just using that lubricant standalone, and you are then just doing an immersive re-wax periodically as your chain maintenance. That is just the, I guess, if immersive waxing all the time is not for you, that is your next, I guess, best option to go to, and you do get a great percentage of the, benefits of immersive waxing all the time. Not as much, and how much that gap's going to be is going to depend on various things, especially if it's off-road. But it's a great, great option, and it's one that many find really, really easy then to step into the immersive wax path, because they don't have to stress about, oh wow, every time I need to relube my chain, I need to do a re-wax. It's just a really, really excellent option, and especially if you're off-road doing that as opposed to wet lubes, I can't recommend that path strongly enough. And then again, if immersive waxing is off the table altogether because that's just not going to suit you, then again, generally a top wax strip lubricant is the next best after that. So I still don't, I guess, based on the fact that we have the drip lubricants compatible with the immersive waxing now, that has and does really open it up for many. And again, I don't see a place where that really falls over for those whom that path suits.
And I guess what's on my mind is that, speaking of Josh Portner at the Spoken Bike Show, he actually informed me that at the Taipei Cycle Show, YBN actually announced new 12-speed Master Links, reusable, for 5 times. They'll be doing both flat top Master Links and a more common like Shimano style Master Link. So I guess I may be coming back again to getting my slow cooker going. And where I come at with that is that so
the cost of Master Links is definitely a factor for some drivetrain systems as to whether or not you want to go immersive waxing all the time. And for a long time, YBN have had reusable Master Links for 10-speed, 11-speed, actually pretty much basically all speeds, as well as 12-speed. However, the normal reusable Master Links for 12-speed are not, or have not been compatible with the flat top chain systems. Now that YBN are stepping into the flat top chain arena, which is outstanding, they are having again reusable Master Links for the flat top chain. So that's going to open that up. Being able to reuse Master Links, I believe they'll probably be the same sort of recommended 5 times reusable like their other Master Links. So if a Master Link is costing you sort of somewhere between, I'm not sure on what the price would be, the QRS links that they have at the moment are sort of running at about, I think it's $6 or $7 each. And getting 5 reuses out of that, if we look at that for road, if you're re-waxing at the recommended every approximately 300 kilometers, then a Master Link is lasting you, around about 1,500 kilometers. So it's a fair way to go for, what's going to be, say, a $6 or $7 Master Link. And then at the end of the day, the cost savings from your much, much lower, as shown in the data earlier, for your chains and drivetrain components cover the cost of the Master Links many, many times over. If you are on a single-use link, so if you're staying with Shimano's links or staying with SRAM's links, especially for flat top, and you are not comfortable reusing those links, as always, the recommendation has been simply go to the combo approach. So wax, relube the next 5 times with SS strip, UFO, or true tension, and then do a re-wax to reset contamination and use a new Master Link. And you are still in a awesome place with regards to drivetrain wear savings and Master Link cost. The only place that's really fallen down with regards to Master Link cost has been with Campy. Campy just do Campy things. If Campy could please explain to me, why does a Master Link cost between $26 and $30 for a single-use link? I'd love to just be in on the meetings when they decide these things. For 11-speed and 12-speed, you can just use the YBN QRS links. Campy will say that you can't, so again, you have to decide if you wish to go against Campy's instructions, but it's a Master Link of, for this exact same chain standard. So we have never seen any issue there. For Ekar 13 speed, that's a problem. They are thinner again, so you can't use a QRS 12 on the Ekar 13. I can't recommend this as an actual option that you should do, just one that has been so far tested by one person, because there's not a lot of Ekar out there. They have been using the SRAM flat top link because the SRAM 12-speed flat top chains are basically the same width as the Ekar chains, 13-speed chains, and all has been going groovy using the SRAM flat top link on their Campy Ekar chain so that they can wax the Ekar chain, which is a great idea just from the cost of the Ekar cassettes and being out there in the world of dirt and dust. But again, we have a very, very small sort of sample size of 1 on that so far. But again, yeah, in general, just weighing up master links, more and more reusable options coming out. Whipman connectors now, there's 12 speed available as well to cover all basically 12 speed normal standard chains that are, say, non-flat top. And now YBN coming out with a reusable flat top. It's again just getting easier and easier to balance that option. All right, almost there. I know these corrections can go on as I play their bits and then counter with my bits. Let's do one last little section to wrap it up.
But all while drip loop's getting better.
I know. See, that's the thing for me is like, is it like, let's extrapolate time, effort, money hemorrhaged on Masterlink purchases versus a bottle of lube and a trusty cloth rag.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you got to just live your life a little bit and not necessarily cook your chain all afternoon and do all this stuff. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying. And
it's 3 minutes. It's 3 minutes of actual labor time. Again, if you are capable of washing your clothes without having to stand for an hour and a half in front of your washing machine as it does it, or you're capable of having your dishwasher wash the dishes without you standing in front of it. How long does it take you to wash the dishes? It takes you the time to put them in, press some buttons once you put the stuff in, and then unload it after. It's 3 minutes. So yeah, there's again this impression of the massive time faff that I don't understand and I would like to understand. And this is, again, it's not your local florist who's just been asked to re-wax a chain and they've never taken a chain off a bicycle before. This is an impression from somebody who can, I have no doubt do lots of outstanding things maintaining and mechanicking on a bicycle. Having an impression that the steps that I demonstrated earlier are somehow a big, difficult time faff for people. And I don't get it, and I want to get it. I want to know where that's, this perception is coming from and being pushed out. I'd also obviously take exception to the hemorrhaging cost of the master links. Again, it is either reusable links, or if you are not going to reuse or use reusable links, or you are not comfortable reusing single-use links, go to the combo approach and get, again, a huge percentage of the benefits. But without the cost of using a new link every time. And that if you're doing that, the wear savings, I mean, again, we showed the data. So versus top wax drip lubricants, which included UFO drip and SS drip, the top immersive waxes were 1/3 the wear rate. That would be greater, again, if I use just block 2 data, so the world of off-road, because you still cannot avoid dust getting down the sides of those parts, dust that will be brought in by the next relube. So over X rides and X hours out there in the dirt and dust, even the very best wax strip lubricants like UFO and so on, they will increase in their friction and wear. It is unavoidable. So doing an immersive wax which resets that, you cannot beat the wear rate and parts longevity benefits from doing that. And again, not to get too nerdy, because I know this has gone on long. When you do a relube, even UFO drip, which is a really heavy relube, they recommend it's basically 8 mil. Your chain is going to be over 100 links long. That means you are putting less than 0.08 of a mil per link of fresh lube onto the chain. That is going over the top of of the old lubricant coating and whatever contamination is part of that. There's only so much that can do with regards to the ratio of contamination to lubrication. When you do a rewax, you are putting your chain in typically somewhere between 300 to 500 mil of 100% lubricant and flushing that through the chain. It takes a very long time, a lot of rewaxes, for the level of contamination in your wax in the wax pot to remotely approach the ratio of contamination to lubricant in your chain when you're just applying 3 to 5 to 8 mil of drip lubricant on top of whatever's in there already. Just drip lube only cannot compete with immersive waxing. That is why immersive waxing in those wear rates in the very extreme and exhaustive control test smashes even the very best drip lubricants. So, and again, if it's not suitable for you all the time, go to the combo approach. Get that reset that immersive waxing gives you, which is the easiest reset you will ever do. So yeah, for sure, use a top product like UFO Drip or SS Drip or True Tension Tungsten All Weather, but do it with immersive waxing if you can handle that 3 minutes to pop your chain off and do an immersive rewax.
With how good the UFO lube truly is, and we've talked about this before, it's like, I'm serious, you've never tried it, like, take the time to prep it correctly, but it's and if you are a wax user, hey, maybe try it too, just to see if you really think it's worth it, because you'll know what better than anybody how it compares to a wax chain. And
you can use it as a top-up lube, right?
Exactly.
You don't have to use each one exclusively.
And so your last bit there. So yeah, sure. I mean, it is great. It is a great option. But when he says, like as a waxer, you're best to compare it. So what does he mean? When he's comparing, say, UFO Drip to immersive waxing, what is making up part of his comparison? Is it just how it rides and feels and how easy it is to reapply UFO Drip versus do a rewax? Or is there something deeper, such as long-term component lifespan and, friction and wear? Because if he's missing the second part, that's really the whole ball game, because the whole reason why you do an immersive wax is to reset the contamination and go back to basically a perfect lube chain again, something that typically will take, well, not typically, always will take a full solvent flush clean to do if you are drip lubricant only. So, that's the unassailable benefit that you get for that 3 minute time investment to do a rewax. So, I mean, yeah, it is great, but how is he comparing, I guess, the apple and the orange? That's what I'd like to know. So yeah, as a wrap, I think, please let me know, how have I gone in my usual very probably over-depth way of countering, Brad's impression that immersive waxing is that huge time faff for not much, extra benefit, as opposed to from, I will say, a very factual basis that immersive waxing is actually really quick and easy for, a huge benefit. We're talking multiple times less component wear rate. And it really doesn't take a lot, even if it's half, which it's greater than half. But even if it was half, you can buy a shit ton of master links for the cost of, say, saving half the wear on a $350 cassette and X amount on chain rings and chain cost. And then once we start to get into the real fun stuff like $700 Axis Road cassettes and $1,100 T-type cassettes and $250 chains, what does saving half the wear rate on those components mean? I mean, like, it just is not. It's not even a competition, with regards to time invested versus the friction and wear and cost savings that you get. Let me know, have I managed to counter it correctly? Do you think that, Brad will be able to, I guess, supply information that, tears down what I've put out there today and substantiates his position? We'll see. I'll try to see if I can, get Brad to obviously listen to this. I hope he doesn't take it sort of defensively at all, because, I love Escape Collective. They are, just a great media thing where they got such integrity in the information that they put out in their journalism. And I think they do great engaging covering of so many aspects in cycling. And the thing where I always try to walk the balance is because if you, attack someone, the natural instinct is to defend. And if you get somebody defensive, then you don't get anywhere constructive, basically ever. So I've tried to obviously present this in a way that is, countering what's been put forward with some actual data and facts.
And I hope that that is not seen as, I guess, as an attack. But at the end of the day, I also can't get around. I do not understand somebody with his experience and mechanical ability arriving at the place he's currently at with regards to immersive waxing. So it's something that I'd like to understand so that I can, hopefully do a better job in what I'm doing. All right. Well, I mean, oh my God, what a weekend coming up. We have Tour de France kickoff. We've got MotoGP. We've got Formula One. And I also have a cross-country marathon race on Sunday. So it's going to be a blur. I, for sure may not start to get to any comments until Monday morning when I clock on there. But have a great weekend, everyone. Thanks for if you managed to make it all the way through this and got something out of it, which is the hope. I hope it was, done okay. But please let me know and let me know your thoughts on all fronts.